All right, we are live. This is a new methodology of Eric Hunley preparation. It's have no notes, no plans, invite really amazing, cool people, and have fun. So how is everybody doing? We've got Nate the lawyer on the Shure SM7B with the sexy voice that we were talking about ahead of time.
Hello, ladies. Hello. I don't even think I can do that well. It's my voice is just not made for that. Someone left a message saying you sound like Denzel. I was like, too bad I don't look like Denzel. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That would be better. Sounding like him is not. It's just part of it. I'm getting on a phone call, but now nobody uses the phone anymore. So,
and not to be overlooked, we have the actual amazing vocal performer, Emily D. Baker, who has done the Constitution in ASMR and is not to be missed.
I did because I'm a nerd, and because when I say things to the law nerds, they're like, yes, you should definitely do that. I'm like, okay, it was one of the subscriber milestones. I was like, should we just do an ASMR reading of the Constitution? And then now I have to do the Bill of Rights that I've been very delayed in reading. But yes, it was a joke because people joke about putting on my videos to fall asleep. And I'm like, I know that I'm long-winded, and they're like, no, your voice. And I'm like, perfect. Because the watch time's amazing. I see y'all falling asleep with the videos on. It's totally fine with me. So yes, I love that we were joking about voices. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. I will try not to do the ASMR voice for those of you that hate it.
Okay, we have Viva Frei. Anyway,
I've never been told that my voice helps anybody fall asleep, and if I were to do ASMR, it would only highlight my lisp, which would be it might be a new fetish within ASMR. But
I mean, yeah. I think you're hitting on something. I like it.
Actually, your voice would wake people up because you're the guy who challenges people who want to play at double speed on YouTube. You're like, oh yeah?
Oh, there's no way I can play his. I can't play your videos on double speed. But lawyers talk fast.
1.5 maybe, and I still lose track of what I'm saying sometimes.
I do that at normal speed of my own voice. So
same. I used to get yelled at by court reporters regularly to slow down. And there was one that would just bang her hand on the table and look at me and just do this. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I talk fast when I have a lot to say.
No, that's I had the same problem, but I say like you're recording it as well, so you can get the bulk of it with the manual things. But then after that, that's why we're recording depositions, because I'm unable to slow down sometimes.
Same.
And here we go. We already have a maniac, somebody who listens to you at 2.3 speed.
Yeah, but that might just be to make like contemporary music or something, not necessarily to understand the words. Like,
let's sample Viva Frei. Wow, that would be insane. Okay, so. Yes. You know what? Let's start off with we'll go to culture, because everybody knows we're going to talk about Chauvin. We're probably going to get in the weeds, but Toddy Westbrook, what happened? Emily had the unique honor of being included in a lot of court documents.
Oh my gosh!
What was the result? Because yes, I haven't followed it.
It was dismissed for lack of personal jurisdiction. I've had a number of law students reach out saying that they are writing papers regarding digital jurisdiction and jurisdiction in the digital age because the case was so interesting, which I love. I think there's a lot of I was hoping the court would actually dive more into it in the ruling, but I get it. Jurisdiction in the digital age is tough. And though, at the beginning of the case, I said, look, I think there are some definite points based on the amount that was done. I thought that, the woman Toddy Westbrook was suing KJ was a bit extra in the lengths that she went to on stuff. But I also said, look, if she wins personal jurisdiction, this might be bad for all YouTubers. So though I think this creator went above and beyond what you would normally see, I also think starting to extend the rope or the net of digital, jurisdiction can be challenging. And so, yeah, it was dismissed for personal jurisdiction. We'll see if it refiles. We'll see if they settle behind the scenes. Now that everybody's gotten their shots in on social media, everybody's gotten their court filings in, everybody's gotten to go back and forth. We might get to, okay, we sent 4 cease and desist. Can we now come to the table and settle? We've now bilked you of a substantial amount of money. It might now be in your best interest to settle.
I didn't read the judgment, but when they declined personal jurisdiction, did they indicate where jurisdiction should be or just say not here?
It's not here.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to go sue where the defendant lives, which is always, always an easy option.
There's no doubt personal jurisdiction if you go there.
Okay. So it wasn't because there were two lawyers that are assholes?
No,
Yes.
it wasn't that. But yes,
Those two
Yes.
lawyers weren't
See,
assholes?
No, Nate, I said that a couple times. That the judge had jurisdiction would have been a deeply nerdy analysis to find jurisdiction. It would have had to go bit by bit with every piece of evidence. These two attorneys were so locked horns. This judge is in her 80s, and I think she looked at the amount of filings and went, "Oh, fuck all of you. Fuck all the way off."
It would have been easy enough to justify jurisdiction. Like they could have easily established jurisdiction if she wanted to hear it. I mean, it wouldn't be any harder than saying defamation. Well, defamation occurs where the defamation is read, published, or whatever. Not hard to prove in the digital age.
But
Go ahead, Nate.
Emma. No,
Go Nate. Hi, Lori.
It's don't forget you have a lot of baggage because there are consequences to finding jurisdiction in that case. And I think one of the consequences is based on a theory that the plaintiff was putting forward, super chats, so forth. It really expanded personal jurisdiction to a place where I don't think the court would, I don't think it would be justified to extend it to. I think there are some facts in this case that you could have hung your hat on, but I think would have been easily open to appeal because it would have been extending personal jurisdiction to a point where I think it would have been too much,
I'm smelling something.
Oh, good.
And,
dear.
He came down into the office and he took a dump somewhere. I can smell it.
I have to confront you about that for a second. I got an email in from Locals, and yes, I'm going to be plugging Locals throughout this episode. But I got an email in from Locals, and it was shaving the butt. And it said, this is obvious. This is a Locals exclusive. So I'm like, thank you so much. I get to pay money to watch you shave your dog's ass. Thank you, sir.
The dog has been getting, they're called will nots, I think is like the farm term. It's will nots because they will not come out. He takes a dump. The nugget gets stuck in the fur. Then he doesn't know that it's there. Spins around, rubs it on the ground, rubs it in. So
we call them Klingons with their cats.
Yeah, we call them Klingons with our cats too.
So I was trimming the hair around the region. I don't think I've done it quite enough, but I never had a long-haired dog before, so it's definitely a learning curve.
Is Locals Viva's version of OnlyFans then? Is this what we are using Locals for?
No, I just got to compete with the original content that Robert puts on our channel because he puts out hush hush, like the history of the deep state. I put up trimming dog butt hair on a Thursday night.
I mean, I like the balance between the two.
Well, if you're talking about deep state and dog asses, a
little bit of something for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it says the guy with the Skynet shirt. This is the corporate deep state, and of course, it's always a race. I have to remember to check to see how long it is before the video is demonetized. Usually, I make it about 5 minutes.
Talking about trimming butt hair, you might get there sooner than later.
Could be. It's almost a fun thing.
But hold on, Nate, and I'm sorry to interrupt the actual meaningful law discussion with the dog butt, but the declining of jurisdiction. The two the various defendants were all in different jurisdictions, right? They're not all in the same jurisdiction.
It's diversity.
Yeah, one is
that's right. It was in federal.
Yeah, one was in Minnesota and the other one's in Washington.
And one in Nevada.
And was the discussion of jurisdiction over state versus federal, or which federal court, or which...
it was in federal court, but they have to use the long arm statute of the state, which is the state of Washington. So they were applying the long arm jurisdiction statute, which more or less says whatever the Constitution says. So then they go into, and then what's the Ninth Circuit? It's the Ninth Circuit out there, and they have their way of figuring out jurisdiction on the federal level, and they just essentially
said, very kind way to speak about the Ninth Circuit. They have their way. They have their way.
This is the same Ninth Circuit that was just they were just reminded by SCOTUS that they have now on 5 different occasions had to be corrected by SCOTUS on the church lockdown. That's the same 9th district.
Yeah, same one.
Barnes' favorite. I think that's Barnes' favorite.
That's the ones that Barnes hates. But that's, it's interesting because of the Ninth Circuit, since ABC is on the court, ACB, now obviously the Ninth Circuit's rulings are going down in flames. Before it was kind of like we got 5-4, but now it's like it's not happening. But with this ruling, one thing about this case, and I'm going to get myself in trouble because one thing about this case,
you can't talk about this case and not get in trouble with somebody. It's just you can't.
It's because whenever you deal with one of these YouTube cases, it's just the people who are involved that start attacking you. I've dealt with like this twice before. In this particular case, though, the one thing I find is that there was so much hatred for Katie Joy Polson that I started watching other people's streams, and people were saying that this case was justice for them. And I just didn't realize how emotional and how much damage this person had done to so many different people in the community, where they were like, you know, this woman is seeking justice for me and my personal. I just hope she wins so I can get some justice. And that, you know, it moved me in the sense of, you know, it's if people are out there feeling that way, and the massive, not like one or two people, there's a lot of people out there feeling that way. I think, to be honest with you, Katie, she needs to kind of self-reflect and say, like, you know, what am I doing out there that's causing all this hatred? You know, it's because it's at a point, I think self-reflection is good. But this case was just too vitriol, and all the money spent for just to say you're in the wrong court. You're in the. That's it. You know, it was over. Let's be honest. It was over 6 figures spent in this case. Right?
Were they? Do we know if they were crowdfunding their legal fees or no?
No, one side
no.
No idea. No idea.
Yeah.
And you're right, though, Nate. And Emily, the one part that just confuses me is how can a small YouTuber, in comparison, be hated so much? Normally, you know, it's the little one getting, you know, with Toddy punching down, but this really was like, it's like,
I have thoughts.
It seems like Katie doesn't only punch, she punches like everybody. I mean, I feel like she walks up to the counter and punches you in the nose. I mean, everybody hates her.
You're going to get a cease and desist shortly, Eric. You need to make sure that you say that is hyperbole, that is a joke, that you have never seen anyone be assaulted. But this case was like that scene in Mean Girls where everyone's sitting around and Tina Fey says, everyone who's been personally victimized by Regina George, raise your hand. And in this case, KJ being the Regina George, because a lot of creators feel personally victimized by kind of the vitriol that can come from that creator. When this lawsuit first, and I had no idea who this creator was, her content doesn't align with the things that I watch on YouTube at all. And when I started following Toddy getting sued by her business partner, because it hit the mainstream media that this business partner suit was happening, and I had watched all of the beauty community Dramageddon and cancellations and Karmageddon and all of it. So I was fascinated that the business partner came in hot. And that lawsuit, the first line in that business partner lawsuit is, "This is a lawsuit started by the defendant's greed." And I was like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. Let's go.
Where's Rod Sterling?
The lawyer didn't sign it. It was, that lawsuit's a thing in on of itself. And then you get days later, Tati suing essentially a commentary or a drama channel that had been talking about the lawsuit. And I'm like, wait a second. And then you've got allegations that kind of line up. And I was fascinated by it. And then others came out of the woodwork to say, this is who this creator is. These are these videos that you're seeing. And people have alleged that she has flagged their channels, that when they've gotten into scuffles with her, that people have tried to hack their channels, like creator after creator, that she or those who follow her have gone after collaborators, have gone after sponsorships. So there are a lot of creators that had issue, which I wasn't aware of when I started covering this, going, isn't this interesting? These two lawsuits are separate but parallel, and it was fascinating. So we'll see what continues to happen.
But just before one for all those lawyers out there, if you get involved in one of these YouTuber versus YouTuber lawsuits, Vic Magnola, the Non Sequitur Show, Toddy Westbrook, they will attack you as the coverage if they don't like your coverage. That's the way it goes. It's just
somebody's always not going to like the coverage. Somebody's always not going to like the coverage.
It's just so, and that's what I told you before. I was like with Vic and Uncivil Law, he got attacked as soon as he started covering the case. With Nick Riccietta, he had an issue, and I had an issue. And it's just because I think people, if you're not saying what people want to hear, then you're the bad guy, you're biased, you're this. And it's just like, all right, just leave it alone. You know what I'm saying?
But the thing is, the lawsuit says what it says. There's no bias here. The lawsuit says this. I either think that's funny, I think it's sassy, or I think it's out of line. Those are my thoughts.
You know what? I'm going to pull up a quote here and put it on the screen. But this always reminds me of Sayer's Law. And technically that was written for academia, but it feels the same way as at YouTube. It's the most vicious and bitter form of politics because the stakes are so low.
Well, it's an interesting thing. The stakes are low, which makes sort of the entry, the bar of entry low as well. It's everyone can get involved and everyone can have a say. It's a very interesting thing. I made a conscious decision early on. It was even before the actual lawsuit, but even in the Tati Westbrook versus James Charles business. I wasn't. It's not that it didn't interest me. It sent more gossipy than law. That it sent more gossipy than anything else. And I said, I could tell this is going to get dirty for everyone. And I'd rather stick with, call it more political stuff, like, the Flynn stuff. The Flynn stuff, you get people angry, but it just seems that there the anger is sort of directed against a clearly identifiable entity that people don't really have a problem hating, that being the government. Like you get into these individual battles and culture, and then everyone they have their followers, they have their haters, and it just gets very ugly very quickly. Even in the Brian Colfage, the We Build the Wall indictment.
Oh yes, I got heat for that too.
Well, it gets crazy, but I ended up in the proceedings as an exhibit.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, that's right.
I can't imagine what you guys did.
Yeah.
But like ending up in the Toddy dispute. I mean, especially given all the online commentary, it's such an easy thing to include and whatever. I mean, it's interesting. Did you guys notice a bump in subscribership or a bump in any negative stuff like
Emily did for sure.
I had a bump I had a bump in subscribership because more people found my channel because I was talking about things that they wanted to watch and wanted to talk about and was talking about culture. But I also noticed a bump in negative as well. There was definitely some Twitter hit campaigns and attempted hacking and death threats and threats against my children and my family, and the FBI is now involved. So it went south very quickly, which surprised me because I prosecuted people for a living. And, when you're prosecuting murderers, it was all much more above board than the way dignified. That it was. They had the mudslinging that came with covering a YouTube lawsuit. But I really do enjoy, for the most part, I enjoy covering culture because with politics, people can't always hear what you're saying when you're saying the facts are this, and people are like, that does not align with my worldview and I cannot hear you, la 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 la. With culture, I find that people's minds are a little more open to learning about the law because it's like, okay, well, I can at least hear it. And so I really just enjoy covering culture a lot.
No, so I want to go around. This is an interesting point. Each and every one of us on this panel have been mentioned in the lawsuit that we were covering. Isn't that crazy? The ones of us who've covered the lawsuits as attorneys. Oh yeah, Viva. Because I remember when Viva and Barnes were in there, they're talking trash about us, and I'm like, the U.S. attorney saying that? That's crazy. You with the North Sequitur show.
U.S. Viva Frei, right?
Yeah, I was in. But I was actually in the Toddy's lawsuit too. I see my avatar in the DMs of the Toddy's lawsuit. Then I'm in the non sequitur lawsuit. I'm like, what the hell?
Did Uncivil make it or no?
He didn't make it. He didn't make it. He didn't make it.
I was in multiple filings and got a header and a paragraph in one of them. It was a little much because then you go onto YouTube and your face is becoming thumbnails and other people's stuff. I'm like, why is what people are saying to me on Twitter a story now? This is it was definitely a different realm. And of course, doing the work I did before, you would see. And I wasn't on social media much as a district attorney, but you would see the news reports and then the comment section, the anonymous comment sections under news stories about cases I was covering. And I would look at some of that stuff just to make sure people weren't threatening, witnesses and victims. But it's just so different in the YouTube space when people really are invested in their creators, either pro or con. And during this entire thing, during all of it, Tati Westbrook still hasn't been on social media. At all.
Well, I think most of you would say she was acting responsibly in terms of the lawsuit on that. Just shut your mouth, let your lawyer do the talking, and
oh boy, did he.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's that. But Emily, you've been on both sides of celebrity now too. I mean, you're coming out of the LA area, so this had to be a surreal experience because you've had to deal with celebrities and try to be empathetic toward them. But then you've kind of had a weird bit of celebrity too, like you said, seeing your face on thumbnails and. Okay, it's not on the level of Britney Spears, but it's still,
not at all.
You're famous.
It's weird.
To me. No.
I mean, well, thank you. It's a different. I mean, it's different. I was I have worked on celebrity cases as a DA. I've had celebrities as victims in cases I worked as a DA. And it's that level, like that LA celebrity, like movie star celebrities is just such a different thing than, being somewhat known on YouTube because you're getting dragged onto Reddit threads and into legal filings. But it was a little bit surreal, for sure. And I watch some of it, but I don't watch a ton of it because, again, what people say about me, good or bad, is their perception of me. So as long as I'm putting out the content that I feel confident in, that I feel is fair, and I really do try to stay, towards the middle of these are the facts on both sides of a thing. And then at the end of that, this is my commentary or how I feel about it. It's just a weird thing because even with the Lindsay Lohan prosecutions that went on in LA, the coverage of this case on YouTube was so much different than that. And I'm like, this girl came to court with no underwear on in a white dress. I mean, the times have just changed so much.
So which was a bigger crime, her statement in front of the court or her wardrobe?
With Lindsay Lohan, her wardrobe was strategically planned, I think, for the judge that she was sitting in front of. So,
Sharon Stone moment or what? No.
Possibly. But she also listened to her attorneys, and we definitely see cases where you can tell who's listening to their lawyer and who isn't listening to their lawyer by what they're playing out on social media. And we're seeing that now in one of these housewives that has been indicted federally. There are rumblings that her lawyer is at the end of frustration because she keeps posting on social media. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, now let's move to another very culturally significant moment here. Somebody in locals, second plug. Unstructured.locals.com.
Is it terrible that I don't know what locals is? Will somebody fill me in?
It's like a Patreon. It's like a Patreon. I'll send you a link. You can set up an account. It's awesome. It's a way for people to donate. You can release posts all the way up to full video. I know they'd love having you. You've got a very large presence. Definitely should talk.
I'll send someone's contact info to you, Emily.
Very cool. You like it.
It's great. It is like Patreon, except it's much more of a community than Patreon. It's like Facebook.
And Patreon having
with something of a paywall for some and public stuff for others. So it is great, and it allows people to support you without them feeling that they're giving 30% to YouTube. Right. It goes to another entity that they don't hate quite as much or at all.
And it's only 20% versus 30, which helps too. And Nate, of course, he's asleep at the wheel and still not on there. So we just I'm
focused, man. But eventually I got to get on Rumble because that's my next move to get on Rumble because
it's not even a move. You just go and you upload the same video that you uploaded.
I know. It's funny, but you know how long, like the last video I took, it took me 2 weeks to do it. And when I actually uploaded it, I told my wife, I said, this video is going to suck. I don't know why it took me so long. And then it blew up. It got the 500. Like, you remember, you were like, hey, Nate, didn't you do that video before?
The U.S. soccer team video.
Yeah.
It's amazing watching a video, say go viral as much as a legal video can go viral. But that video was picking up, every time I would refresh, 10,000 views. And it's amazing. People were looking for that issue and looking for news and explanations that you don't see in the media, and you sure as heck don't even see being communicated from the White House. If anybody doesn't know about it, was that the next one we were going to, Eric?
No, actually, the next one we're going to is a very important thing of, I guess he's a Canadian MP or whatever, William Amos.
The dude who was caught naked. Naked. That is irrelevant to me. Not only is it irrelevant, I think it might even be arguably potentially illegal to share naked pictures of somebody for no legitimate news reason. The dude, he was not pulling a Tubin. This is a Canadian.
Hold on. Just think of
immediately demonetized.
Pulling a Tubin.
Pulling a Tubin.
Those words were chosen carefully.
I don't know why I struck the conversation in such a manner.
It's hard not to, Eric. It's hard not to.
I'm talking about water activities, going tubing on luscious wet waters. Problem. So the dude, they're doing a Zoom meeting. I don't know what the meeting was for, and apparently he had gone jogging, took a shower, and he's in his office, and he's just getting into his clothes, and he walked by naked. And then someone screenshotted it, sent it, media reported on it, and then you have everyone tweeting it left, right, and center.
Boom. Yellow, limited.
I'm sorry, Eric.
It's Emily's fault. I'll blame her today.
It is my fault. But why? It's the shirt. It's the shirt that's done it.
Oh, it's obviously the shirt.
Obviously, the shirt.
Yeah.
I know, Nate, your
Why did
shirt is
somebody
offensive.
What was
It
the
is what
Zoom
it
meeting
is.
about? And why have your video on
Well,
if you're
so
going
who
to be
knows?
getting dressed?
Who knows that it was a lawmaker meeting? I think the biggest scandal in the entire thing is that he might have been jogging while he was supposed to have been on the meeting. Maybe. But
you have to turn the camera on.
I walk around in the nude a lot, but I'm very neurotic about my camera not being on. But nothing more serious than that.
I think it's a reality TV syndrome. Everybody's going, how is you can get all these people to act like idiots when they know there are cameras? It's like they forget.
Oh, yeah,
Over time, it's just you kind of, it's just there, it's on, whatever, and then it just sort of disappears into the background.
No, there's no question you forget, especially sometimes you forget. Sometimes, I don't know, your assistant might have turned it on for the meeting and you didn't know. Sometimes your kids are on and you don't know. Who knows? But the dude was just naked. I mean, what? And to use it politically, and then everybody makes their jokes. First time I've seen, what was the joke they were making? There was a liberal joke in it that you finally see a liberal uncovered or what, I don't know, but it wasn't funny. It's probably going to be a great boost to his political campaign or career because it's innocuous. He's being made fun of for being nude,
for changing your clothes,
and for being caught on camera. It's not like it was not like he was doing any sort of
intentional
in front of the camera. He was just walking in the background. But it's a non-issue. But there is some strict laws about about revenge.
Prawn. I think the latest term is prawn. Like prawn. Big shrimp.
Popcorn.
Hot buttered revenge prawns.
Hey, my latest case is that. So.
By the way, my Giuliani video was permanently demonetized where I talked about revenge prawns. But yeah, no, it's a non-issue. It makes for a good distraction, and then people use it for political purposes. But it's a non-issue, and I think it's actually wrong to have shared the tweet of the image. There, I said it.
Well, I've heard.
You know what,
Nate? I've heard that people might react differently if it was a female. Like if that was out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, probably would. Yeah, that's a good point.
And what are your thoughts about like Katie Hill? Because wasn't that a nude footage of her and a staffer? Now I could say she's being irresponsible, but is it really cool to have nude photos of people out there in public figure or not?
Well, the Katie Hill, I think, was a much, much more egregious, over-the-top situation.
Wow, everybody's going
silence.
Jeez.
I don't remember it.
All right, here's a wee bit of help to help circumvent the behavior of the YouTube monetization savages. Thank you so much. And Law Nerd, wow, Emily brings them. Thank you.
Hey, Law Nerds. I wonder, to Viva's point, if it would really be newsworthy, because you could report on that story without the imagery easily.
It was a pure,
but it's not
it was a pure politicized, not even a hit piece. It's just mockery.
Right. Yeah. Public shaming is where we've reached at this point.
I do want to ask you guys about something that's serious that happened on YouTube. I sent Viva the video. He thought it was actually a joke. But now YouTube is saying that they can demonetize you, even kick you off the platform, not for anything you did on YouTube, for stuff that you do in your personal life.
I thought it was a joke, and
this is happening on Twitch as well.
Patreon.
This is what they did to David Dobrik.
Yes,
because Twitch is doing this, and this is the angle they took with David Dobrik, with this kind of creator code of conduct and the things that you do off platform affecting the creator community. The thing that always worries me with any of this is there's no transparency, and how are they going to decide what you're doing and if that's actually what it is?
It's allegations versus facts, right?
Forget it's preposterous. Are they gonna start taking down channels for DUIs, for criminal convictions offline? Are they gonna start taking down videos for that? It's preposterous. And to refer to, the guy said he referred to it as a privilege to be on YouTube. This is where I say that there's going to be a lawsuit based on false representation and deceitful business practices and acquired rights or something along those lines. Being on YouTube, it was never sold as a privilege. Bottom line, it was the public forum, or it was the forum with which to speak, through which to speak. To call it a privilege now, it's like a membership type thing, where they can do whatever they want and control whatever they want, which is the antithesis to the platform it's supposed to be. So if they want to start calling it a community, that membership is a privilege, how then can they say that we should benefit from any sort of immunity for operating as a 230
Yeah.
platform?
Yeah, then they get no. And this is as long as we keep getting these different platforms treading that line of we can do whatever we want, but we also have full immunity. You can't have it both ways, and it is deeply, deeply frustrating because with the David Dobrik stuff, and I'm sure you guys watched it all go down.
Actually,
yes, there are allegations. Oh gosh, very, very quickly. So Vlog Squad, 80 million or more subscribers on YouTube. He has a member of the Vlog Squad who was accused in a very lengthy article on Insider about a alleged alcohol-induced assault with one of the members of the Vlog Squad. They filmed it for content, put it up. She later asked the video to come down and then shared her story about
assault?
Well, they filmed them going back into the room. Those who were there say they didn't quite realize she was so intoxicated. Others that were there said she was basically passed out, intoxicated, and there's no way consent could have been given. It was the theme of the video. It was the point of the video. It was the jokes that were made. And then she shared her story with Insider. David Dobrik issued one very terrible explanation video, one mostly terrible apology video that he had kind of created this circumstance where these types of things happen. More allegations came up of different types of behavior, and YouTube demonetized his channel. Now, this has not gone to court. This has not gone to a police report. This happened on his channel, but with another individual that he says he has no knowledge of. His platform was demonetized. All of his sponsors backed out. And I have a different viewpoint between the sponsors. Sponsors can bail on you when you have a scandal like this anytime they want. Absolutely. With the platform demonetizing him, I understand it, but also I'm curious as to the decision-making process. Okay, if you're going to demonetize David Dobrik's channel for something that happened that he filmed and put on YouTube, then where is the transparency and where does that stop with what people are alleged to have done in videos? He had a lot of problematic videos, but
just to be clear, YouTube has made it clear in that video that you can do nothing on your channel. You can do nothing on video.
Yes.
They can demonetize you and remove you from the platform if you did something that has nothing to do with YouTube, totally separate. That's the fear. And like again, what you guys are saying with 230, it's at a point YouTube can't. The terms of service, essentially what they said, the terms of service mean nothing, right? Because it doesn't matter, right? You can follow every term. They said it in the video. You can follow every term of service and do everything correctly on YouTube for YouTube, and we can still take away that privilege. So at a point, when does it now that publisher versus platform distinction? The reason why you had these terms up there is so like I said, we're a platform and you're our terms. But now if those terms don't mean anything, that seems to be more publisher than platform to me. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it becomes a pure editorial decision, and it becomes them curating the content for which they then become responsible. And
exactly,
that was my question.
The amazing thing is, you had Jack Dorsey saying, "No, we don't coordinate. Twitter doesn't coordinate with Facebook or Google, whatever." when I listen to that sounds like exact coordination. Put up a tweet that we don't like, we're going to take you down on YouTube.
And why do you think they all wait and see who moves
you
first?
Put up a tweet we don't like, we're also going to make sure it gets down off of Facebook, and we're all going to talk to each other behind the scenes to make sure that something has no traction.
I don't know that they're talking though. I'm with Allison Morrow for News with Booze, and there's a lot of just echo chamber or groupthink. I mean, they think the same way. So a lot of it is they go, "Oh, Twitter took that down. We should take that down." And they don't necessarily go call somebody at Twitter and say, "Should we take that down?" A lot of it's just that these guys all think very much in a similar manner. And they tend to, if somebody will go first and then the rest will follow along. Question, and I don't know if this would be Nate or Emily, you guys both dealt with criminal. I'm curious that YouTube taking down that video from Dobrik and demonetizing, doing all of that, are they tacitly acknowledging that a crime has occurred and they may share some culpability themselves by it being on the platform and the platform profiting? I'm just curious. I don't know.
That would be the immunity that Section 230 should provide to them, is that they're not, they do their best and they're not responsible if. but I don't even know that a crime has been there. But if you can bring up Brandy Lee Liddon Carpenter's comments here, it says, she says, I think it makes sense for YouTube to perhaps demonetize creators if the stuff being done off YouTube is still related to their YouTube channel or being used to drive engagement, etc. That's a legitimate point where it's a business, and if you go like scale a building and say follow me on YouTube,
yes,
right.
you can understand it there. But my goodness, that's not what it sounded like when this guy was saying.
No, that's they specifically said that's not it, right?
Because that's not what it is.
Yeah,
it's going to be if you're at a protest. It's going to be if you're seen somewhere they don't agree with. That's what it's going to be used to.
That's the problem. Is there's not a universal rule being applied. I mean, everybody can go look around saying, well, why don't you do this creator and that creator and that creator and that creator? And it's like, well, they probably agree with them. Even though technically, if you draw by the line and say, here are the equal laws, they're breaking it.
By the way, Emily, Nate, do you guys know this? I mean, they demonetized Dobrik, but are they still running ads on it? Because the other new updated term of service was even if they
allows you to run ads.
I don't know. That's a claim. That's unjust enrichment because they can basically say it's in our best interest now to find a reason and then take 100% of your ad revenue instead of splitting it with you.
Absolutely, because they could still run ads, and I have YouTube Premium, so I haven't seen it. But I will definitely put that question out there and ask, because I know there's people paying very close attention to it, because that is the problem. And I've seen a number of creators address this when they've talked about topics that are either more sensitive or more traumatic, saying, I am not monetizing this video. I have not chosen to monetize this video, but you may still see ads, letting their community know, because that's something creators get knocked for as well. It's like, oh, you have this video based on this very serious topic, but then you go ahead and monetize it. And so now creators are having to say if they're not monetizing, but it still may be monetized by YouTube, even though I'm not choosing to monetize it, which is very interesting on the unjust enrichment.
There's another variant of that too. And it's not unfair, but the reaction videos, especially of music. Most of the reaction videos where they're reacting to a song or whatever, they're not getting the money from YouTube. It's going straight to the artist or the label, and they're having to get their money through other means. And a lot of people don't realize that because they'll still see ads, and the creator of the video is not getting them.
That's a copyright issue, and that's one of the ones where I've never gotten into the flack that Emily got into and Nate with that other lawsuit. But when MXR Plays had their fight with Jukin, MXR Plays had they have a very big, active, loyal following who may not be totally familiar with the law, where you say they think it's, first of all, you see someone crying on the internet, you're going to feel bad for them. And when you see someone with 800,000 subs and their life and livelihood taken, sort of stripped economically because a big bad video platform is claiming copyright, you can get impassioned when you don't know the law behind it. But a lot of these reaction videos, it makes sense for the original copyright holder to monetize the content. A lot of these reaction videos, by and large, replay the entire video, and you have some funny quips here and there, and it's not necessarily fair use. And you're basically, on the one hand, either deriving an income from someone else's work and depriving them of that income, or it gets claimed and then you have a fight because you don't appreciate how the law works.
I have a YouTube question. Maybe you guys know. You have larger channels. I deliberately, when I do the monetization, take everything off except for pre-rolls that are skippable, because I feel like that's the least intrusive on people watching. That okay, boom, they can skip, move on. I'm curious. Do you know if YouTube will just slip other ads in anyway at the different points or whatever?
Only thing I know is that they say they can. They say they can monetize any content on the platform whichever way they want, even if it's not eligible for the partnership program, even if it's demonetized, even if they choose not to. So I'm assuming yes. If that's their thing, then I'm assuming maybe Europe will only get certain ads, but if they choose to, it doesn't preclude them from it.
I run a lot more ads than that, so I don't know. I don't know where YouTube would slip an ad onto my video. I run all the ads.
I have a theory. Everyone can disagree with it. People are getting free content. If all they have to do is sit through an ad, and YouTube ends up having to charge a client for it, it's not the end of the world. And in fact, people should be happy that they can encourage people to get passive income from the content they create instead of having to be reliant on sponsors who then probably dictate more content than the ad guidelines. But if you could bring up the Dragon's Treasure comment here. When I make a 50-minute video and I get $0 because of a 15-second clip, that's utter effing B. That's where the copyright troll argument versus the legitimate copyright claim argument comes into play. It's all contextual. If the clip you're using is only a 15-second clip, you're using 100% of someone else's work and they're claiming 100% of yours. There's an interplay there, and it's always context specific.
Well, you covered that with the PewDiePie thing, right?
Yeah,
But can you guys confirm this? From what I understand about fair use law, is that it's an affirmative defense. So I can go ahead and argue fair use all day, but they can still say, okay, fine, we're going to court. I have to pay a lawyer and everything else. And yes, I may prevail, but my ass can still be in the poorhouse because I have to pay for a lawyer and everybody else just to prove that, yes, I was okay to use that.
Yeah, that's where the abuse that's where the broken nature of the system comes into play. They claim it. You can dispute it online, and then YouTube puts it in escrow until they resolve the dispute. If they maintain it, then you have to file a counter notice. And that is, it's an industry. I mean, it's an industry. People mass flag abuse of copyright for music they don't own, or just abusive claims because there's de minimis use, but prove it in court. But so that's why there is a legitimate grievance. There's also legitimate claims from copyright holders, and it's a tightrope to walk.
I got to say hello to my girl Kate Compton. What's going on, Kate? She's like one of my loyal fans, and she's watching all my coverage. So she's great. She's fantastic.
Thank you.
Your coverage has been a lot of fun. It's been keeping me up to date because I have not been watching all of the things with the Chauvin trial. Because it's just
there's a trickle down ladder effect here. So you can either watch the entire thing and then watch Nate and get some condensed summaries. Right. You can not watch the entire thing. Watch R&R Law Group at night, summarize the entire thing.
He's really good, yeah.
Then you go down to Nate who has more condensed summaries, or you can watch him live doing it. And then Sunday nights, I condense all of this aggregate knowledge from Nate and from R&R, and we discuss it with Robert. So it's something for everyone's attention span in there.
Which I love. I love watching the interplay and the input, and I love seeing other lawyers talk about it because normally, I mean, I'm still just a few years out of leaving the DA's office. You would normally go to work and sit around with your colleagues and talk about this. So I feel like LawTube has provided that intellectual space of, hey, what's everybody else thinking of what's going on? It's been very, very helpful.
I think this is what you were saying, Nate, or everybody's saying, and I agree with. There should be some sort of a spectrum. If it's a 10 minutes of a video, then you get approximately 10 minutes of a 60 video. Fine, you can have 15% of the ads. Variant like that.
I think you run implementation problems. And you've got channels that are blowing up right now on Reels, and their entire Reels channel, and they have now hundreds of thousands of subscribers. All they post are Reels, and they're just ripped TikToks from other people. And so you've got, it's very interesting the way that the AI kind of learns and grows. And it's like, oh, people like this. It's like, that's not even their content.
But there's a counterpoint, because there are bands like Ask Fleetwood Mac about a dude on a skateboard who's drinking ocean spray. What that does for you when a chunk of your song, 20 seconds, gets played on there, and for the first time since 1976 hits #1 on the charts.
But
and #1
that's
is Spotify.
under the use of the platform. The platform has the licensing agreements to allow those music to be played. What I'm talking about is people taking a TikTok creator's TikTok, re-upping it, the entire thing on a YouTube Shorts channel, and those videos getting pushed out. But no, I think the music industry has definitely gotten a huge bump from things like TikTok. And TikTok, I think, did a much better job than any other platform of getting those music rights. But they were also Musical.ly before they were TikTok. So they had that interaction. But yes, we're seeing a lot of old music bump in the charts because of TikTok. And my kids knowing who Fleetwood Mac is all of a sudden.
Well, the reaction videos, because you have the two kids on doing the Phil Collins in the air tonight.
Twins, the new trend.
Yeah.
I love their channel.
Okay, so see, we're all guilty of it. But I mean, if Phil Collins is, he's smart enough, and his publishing company's smart enough, they're like, oh,
go ahead.
Thank you for making me relevant again.
Which is why they're not copyright striked. They have them up, but then they might have to split or give the ad revenue to the distributor or the.
I would be surprised if the reaction to Phil Collins is not going straight to Phil Collins, but they just keep it up and let them run ads on it and let YouTube promote it. And
it depends on the band. Tool doesn't block or strike, I know, and they pretty much let everybody go to town out there.
Dolly Parton splits.
Dolly Parton split. Yeah, I think that I think the artists really should come in on some of these, especially because I feel like rock was dying personally. Dying rapidly. And I feel like it's getting a whole new life by a young audience who's doing reaction videos and discovering, bands like Jethro Tull, who I love, and Pink Floyd, and, some really, really great classic rock. Is like, hey, you dummies. Go ahead.
You know who my daughter loves? My daughter loves Guns N' Roses. She's Welcome to the Jungle in Paradise City. I'm like, how did you know about those songs? And why are you, but she loves them to death. So
I love seeing my music. Go ahead, Viva.
Oh no, I was actually started reading the chat. No, I was saying Guns N' Roses is just, there's nothing not to like. You want to discover something new, like old school Bare Naked Ladies or Def Leppard or
sure.
Who's
Bare Naked Ladies is great.
Oh, the Bloodhound Gang. I mean,
we don't need a water.
I'm surprised the Bloodhound Gang hasn't been canceled by Gen Z. I mean, they came for Eminem. They haven't discovered that Bloodhound Gang also needs to be canceled because they don't understand satire.
Yeah, well, this is a joke. So I'm listening to I'm listening to my kids like, you guys never heard of Bloodhound Gang? And I start
Bad Touch.
Like, holy crap, this is a lot worse than I remembered it being.
Well, you're finding that with movies. I think you were just talking about that.
You don't know. It's funny because I haven't.
Try to watch Blazing Saddles with Gen Z.
You can't watch.
Go for it.
It's funny. Which movie were we watching? We watch movies like on Friday nights and over the weekends. And every movie we watch now, we say, if this movie was made today, these people would be canceled. It's like every single thing. It's like you can't make any type of joke now without people understanding. Like, you're offensive to fat people, you're offensive to skinny people. It's like it's at this point. I understand. It's funny because a lot of times when I have I have a friend who's a huge Trump supporter, like still wearing his red hat. And one of the reasons why he was so enthralled he says he just wants a world to be free where he can say what he wants to say and not have to risk his job and his livelihood for just having an honest opinion about something he doesn't like. Hey, you weigh too much, go on a diet. And that now shouldn't have, for him saying that in a bar to somebody as a joke, shouldn't affect his job and his livelihood. And that's, I think, the point where we're at now, is that even with YouTube, if I say something in a bar that YouTube doesn't like, they can destroy my livelihood. And that's too far. Where is this the freedom? We are afraid of government, infringing on our rights, but yet we're giving them away to places like YouTube. And I think that's the back and forth that we have to struggle with.
Build your own YouTube, Nate, and that's all you have to do.
I would say it. We would.
Build your own Twitter and call it Parlor and get taken out.
I'm telling you,
the law is the law, though. It's the problem. The law is the law. I don't know how to fix it, but the law is the law.
Clarence Thomas said it out. They're going to fix it soon because it's not. It's an argument that should be made is that these what have become public platforms, but let's just call them private enterprises. They were built using government subsidies. They were built given tax credits. All businesses were, and so they're going to have to be subject to the same legal standards as other enterprises that provide services to the public. And I think the utilities argument is a good one, because I think they've certainly gotten there.
Yes.
But there's going to be a solution sooner than later, because everybody's getting pissed off at this except for Jack Dorsey, I think.
Well, if the government's arguing that, and you see a lot of people arguing internet is now a basic right, like kids can't go to school without internet. You can't engage without access to some of these things. And if that is true, then aren't they utilities? If you have government programs to give out cell phones, and if you are trying to push everyone online, then aren't the forms of conversation the same as the channel that gets you onto those forms of conversation?
Somebody brought up a good movie on this one. Would you agree that Tropic Thunder might be the end of that? Like if we're gonna have a window of time of what's possible, Tropic Thunder might have been that was the end of comedy of that.
I think it was. Go for it, Nate.
No, I was just gonna say with Tropic Thunder, I saw absolutely nothing wrong with that movie. Absolutely nothing wrong. And then 2 years later, I remember when they tried to cancel Robert Downey Jr. for the blackface. And it's interesting because Whoopi Goldberg on The View, who's extremely left, she remember when she had the issue with Ted Danson, showing my age. I remember she had the issue with Ted Danson where she was doing a birthday party, and she told Ted Danson, hey, do blackface. They'll love it. It'll be fun. And then they tried to cancel Ted. And she was like, no, it's, I'm the one. That was my birthday. I told him to do blackface.
They were dating, weren't they?
Yeah, they were dating at the time, and she had told him. And Tropic Thunder reminded me of that. But I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, we've gotten to the point now where comedy is virtually dead, because if you make the wrong joke, you look at the comedian they're going after now, the guy who's married to the black woman. What's the guy name?
Bill Burr.
And he said, Bill Burr.
Finally?
And they were saying he's
they're going
racist.
After finally.
They've been going after, but they were saying he's racist, and they're like, well, he's married to a black woman,
Oh, is it
Oh,
because
because
that
he did it in an award show. He did it in an award show. That's why.
This is where you don't know what pose law on the internet. You don't know what satire. Someone posted a tweet that said him being married to a black woman is not evidence of him not being racist. It's actually evidence of him being racist in that he's the white man having married the black woman, and threw in words like appropriation and domination and whatever.
Oh my God!
It's when you want to see racism, all roads lead to racism. There's no question.
That's
see
true.
color, you're racist. Don't see color, you're racist. The conclusion is racism, so they'll find a way to get there. Tropic Thunder, I do think, was the end of it, because the Robert Downey getting canceled later was one thing. At the time, I remember the uproar because they were making fun of mentally challenged people, and
Yes.
it was special. What was his name? Jack.
Special needs.
Yeah,
Simple
what was that
Jack.
name?
Simple Jack.
Ben
Simple
Stiller?
Jack.
And they said, never go full R word. And at the time, I remember there being an uproar for that, which was in my memory the first time I have remembered that in my life. I saw the movie. I didn't like the movie, not because of anything other than the fact that I thought the violence, which was supposed to be comedic, cartoonish violence, I thought that was too realistic in the sense that I didn't find it funny. But no, there's no question. Call it wokeism, and people don't like the word. Wokeism is killing comedy. It's killing music. It's killing artistic innovation. And there's at some point people are going to revolt, or we're going to be living in gray buildings and walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
It is deeply. I mean, I think we saw this with the Nike Satan shoes as well. That it is now you have not the Nike trademark battle over that, but you have an art collective poking fun at our corporations making a deal with the devil is essentially
Satan
what
shoes.
it was. And people were outraged. I'm like, it's art. They're allowed to outrage you. Just don't buy the fucking shoes.
Well, Emily, I'll push back on the one art argument. That was $1 million art project that they made there.
Yes, it was. Their lawyers called it an art project. And I fell out when I was reading some of those. When the lawyers called it an art project, I was like, my kids make art projects and they're not $1,000 a pop. Maybe I'm undervaluing it.
Everybody won.
Oh,
Nike got the virtue signal. They got to get the word out and be on the map. I mean, it was a big win all around.
For everybody.
I still believe that it was a joint venture art project, and the only people who may not know about it were the courts. But if it was disclosed that they actually abused of the judicial system for a marketing campaign, next level guerrilla marketing. But there's no way it could not be. Let me rephrase that. I suspect there was a mutual understanding, unwritten even, that we were both going to benefit from this, and all it's going to cost us. We spend billions of dollars advertising a year. We don't need to get a sports athlete. Just go to court. It'll cost us $50,000, and it's the best advertising everywhere. But no, Art Project would have flown with 12 or 24 shoes, like with the Jesus shoe.
Yes,
near 1,000
600,
$1,000 a pop. Yeah, so
I don't know if Nike knew
already
that those were coming out. Shoes, they sent them out fast because they knew Nike was going to sue them. They knew they had pushed too far. They made the shirts that had the lawsuit cover page on them with little devil horns and called it legal fees and sold it for $66. Now I've got a question for Nate and Viva and Eric. Let me know.
Amazing.
Is the cover page of the lawsuit the copyrighted property of the lawyer that wrote it? In that there could be a copyright issue with selling the shirt that has the lawsuit printed on the front of it. Because Nike's lawyers wrote the lawsuit.
Public record?
It's public record, though, right?
But can you sell it on a shirt?
I don't know if you can represent public record.
Oh no, I guess the bigger
I would
question
think you could if it's public record.
The question would be, could anyone else sell it? So
anyone other than Nike, right? Because it was Mischief that sold it. Mischief sold the cover page of Nike's lawsuit against them on a shirt.
So I mean that would be. There's the question: is that it's not a question of it's a question of commercializing,
right?
But is it public domain?
Yeah,
but no, because images of copyrighted material in the public domain are not themselves they're not public domain.
Yes.
So,
right.
So what if you take a picture of a statue in front of the Supreme Court, put it on a T-shirt with a offensive message? Wouldn't that be about the same thing?
I'm trying to think. I mean,
that's
this is a Leonard French
question.
I know it's a French question. It was in my brain. It's one of those things when I'm like, but if Nike wanted to be really petty, do they turn around and sue over the shirt saying that the lawsuit was written by them and therefore is their copyrighted material? Even because it's, I don't know. I thought it was funny.
I would say no, because if you're filing a lawsuit and you're talking about, I would go with no, but it's an interesting question. I think it's an interesting question.
No, as far as the sub issues go, there's no question. It's not, the exhibits in a lawsuit can still be protected by copyright,
Of course,
even
yeah,
though they form part of the lawsuit. Question would be like the text of the lawsuit might be public domain, but not the logo of the law firm on the page, so you couldn't reproduce that.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting, and it brings us back to like the Toddy Westbrook suit, where it seems that when KJ got served the cease and desist, that with those cease and desist, they had also filed them for copyright before they served her with them, so that they were copyrighted letters, so they couldn't be shared on the internet. And I think that's an interesting way to do it. So, and that was based on her videos saying that they were filed for copyright, and she couldn't show them on her channel. We're seeing lawyers get into a whole new
This
world
is some
of this.
creative stuff. I kind of want to see some of it play out.
I
I
would love
wanted
to
to
see
see
the
that
Toddy
over the shirt.
Toddy. Yeah, I would definitely. It's an interesting case. I would love to see it play out, but I don't think the defamation case is as strong, and I would love to see it play out because I want to see if my theories of why it's not strong plays out. But it can go either way. I do accept it can go either way, but I really think the defamation is weaker than a lot of people are saying it is because of the public, because they're both public figures. That's really where I think the crux of the case is going to fail. But
I have always said in that case, I think the defamation is stronger as to the business and as to her husband than as to her. But I also think some of the cyber harassment might be interesting. I think we're going to see more and more defamation suits because we're seeing that play out with Cardi B and Tasha K, right? With this large defamation suit. And I think once again, as we get into this world of where if you say something people don't like, not only can you be sued, but you can be canceled. It'll be interesting to see how the courts fall with where is the defamation, where is the not. And Viva, I was just watching you talk about this with the Barstool Sports guy, Portnoy, and that defamation suit. So where finding the boundaries of that is going to be very interesting.
By the way, this is a callback from Locals and a chance to pitch Locals again on structure.locals.com. No, somebody asked, I've got a live chat going there, and I was like, oh, good point. They put mugshots on t-shirts.
That's true.
So that would seem to be a very similar scenario.
Yeah, I don't know. There might just be the issue that you
likeness.
The individuals are not suing for reasons that they might not want to sue because of money reasons or publicity reasons. But the whole Techno Viking case, which was a guy in the Techno Viking is like one of the first viral videos ever. This buff German guy at a parade in Germany walking behind a convoy of cars and starts dancing techno music. You guys don't know the Techno Viking? I'm sorry.
No, sorry. No.
Okay, if someone in the chat
You're
find
alone
it,
with
and
this
share,
one.
and find it and share it with us, so I can put it up on the
Techno
screen.
Viking, the original. I wouldn't share it because there was a lawsuit there because someone made these graphics, sort of like the Obama Hope and Change type graphic, the contrast of colors, put it on a shirt. Techno Viking sued because he said, I never wanted you marketing my likeness. I don't care that I was in a viral video in a public area. You marketed my image, and the guy who shot the video made the material had to give all the profits back.
Where was this? Was this in the US or Germany?
So that's what I don't remember offhand. I think it was Germany. I don't know
I was
why.
gonna say here, if you're in a public gathering, I don't think you have any rights. Like if you're at a protest and they take pictures of you at the protest, I don't think you have any rights. And I'm not the lawyer.
That's where the limit is. And maybe it's different in the States, but I don't think it is. I think the expectation of privacy is different than someone marketing and commercializing off your image and likeness. So yeah, you can if you're in a public space and they take a picture and put it in the news, it's one thing. But if they start marketing mugs of your likeness, it's another. So I think that's where the distinction is. It is in Canada.
Girls Gone Wild case. That was the case in which they would go to the parties and film people doing public domains, doing certain things, and some of the women sued. But I'm not sure what happened at the end of that case. But this is the Girls Gone Wild case. They filmed and they were using their likenesses and passing the video. So if somebody knows what the end of that case was, but that's exactly what you're saying is exactly what happened in that case.
Likeness is a very interesting thing.
Everybody screenshot, I guess, and remember the YouTube crazy code.
Guys, I got 22 million. Oh, I can't post comments because I'm in the damn StreamYard. I'll have to go to the YouTube. Hold on, I'll be there in a second. Okay, carry on.
If you signed in, if you signed into StreamYard
separate, so I can.
Yeah. She's got it on YouTube up there too. Yeah, and you're already a moderator. So your links can show, David.
Okay.
I think Nate is too. I don't remember.
Eric, we have to celebrate. I just saw your number counter click over.
Did it?
Eric. Do you not have the sound on? You know, you can turn sound on so it makes a little sound so you can celebrate it.
I barely get it working, and I got it to stay up on the screen all the time, and that took me a couple hours of aggravation going, why the hell does it keep changing over to the next stupid thing all the time? Anyway, so while I do computer programming, I can be a moron. I have range.
I mean, it's fair, and it's app based, so it's fair. But yes, you can also change it so it only bings at the 1,000 versus the 100. I like the validation every 100. So mine.
You know, honestly, I probably should, because it's been happening so rarely now. It's almost a surprise. I don't know what's going on with YouTube. I'm just glad that I'm not going down. It's like, I'll take whatever I can
There
get.
definitely are interesting lulls in content and subscribership, and I'll see wonkiness where things will grow and then all of a sudden you'll see it get stripped down and you're like, wait a second, what are you doing cleaning house on subscribership? And then I've got a bunch of people going, I was unsubscribed. I'm like,
well, you know what? It happens to me too, because I'll be like truck along, and then right under 100 mark, I'll be at like 97, and then I hit the number, but it doesn't actually count enough to tip it, because it's got to be like 5 over or something or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it'll be 92. And then it goes back to 97, 99, 92. God bless it. So I don't know. I'm starting to just get over it slightly, because I'm being beaten down like an abused spouse.
no, it just, I've embraced that it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Everybody, as far as I can tell, you can follow people's charts on Social Blade. Everybody's in something of a lull now, which everybody, maybe save and except 1 or 2 entities, are in something of a lull, viewership, subscribers, and that. But I think it seems to be across the board on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's a political spectrum or a.
I think it's news.
I think it's
news oriented. Behavior panel's blowing up still.
Yeah.
I did like a chart, and everybody who's kind of covering the news right now is suffering, just like the networks I think are suffering.
It might.
The loss of.
Well, I don't know. I think it might be what you're covering, because I don't want to, but I've like the past week I've gotten like maybe 15,000. So
you were
blowing up.
If overall watch,
I was done for a while. Yeah.
If overall viewership is down, though, I mean, at least in my area here, everything's opening back up again. The weather's nice again. Kids have been on spring break, and people are going back to work because the vaccines are rolling out. So I don't know if it's just overall viewership is down, or if with spring break and the change in weather. I mean, most of areas in Tennessee don't have mask mandates anymore, so people are out and about. Kids are back at baseball. And
yeah, that's true. That makes sense. The weather gets better. And then honestly, I don't know if I've ever fully recovered after getting the channel vaporized. I mean,
that's true,
like right after that, I picked up a couple hundred. The amount of publicity I got, though, I didn't get a whole lot. And then it just kind of chugs along. So I don't know.
And it goes in cycles too, though. You go up, you go down, you go up, you go down, these flat lines. So, as long as you're consistent with the content, I think we'll all be fine.
You guys
just keep inviting friends.
You
And you guys bring your friends.
You guys are talking about freedom in the US and no mask mandates, and now they're locking down Ontario even harder, and probably Quebec.
Wait, wasn't your country voted the best in the world?
I don't know when they took that toll or that poll or that tally. Yeah, I saw the articles, and I'm debating with people. I was like, yeah, it's great. I'll let you know when I can read the article, when I can leave my house to pick out the paper, because I'm tongue in cheek. Whatever. It's a good country, but we need new leadership. Right, well,
back to
what kind of lockdowns are you going? What kind of lockdowns are you guys
We're
under?
under curfew in Quebec, and now we can't go out of our house after 8 o'clock at nights. Yeah,
I didn't realize that COVID was 8 p.m. I'm confused by that.
There's no logic here. There's no logic or reasoning. You have our own health director said that there's no correlation, no concrete scientific evidence of the effectiveness of lockdowns to stop the spread of virus. Whatever. I'll get angry if I talk about it. So yeah, we're land of the free, home of the brave. What do we do? Do we go to Chauvin? Because we got there's.
Yeah, I have maybe like 20 minutes left before I have to go.
Okay, and I know Emily has a hard out too. So.
It's okay. Let's go. Let's do it.
All right. Here we go.
What is up? Okay, so people need to appreciate one thing. The chicanery that occurred yesterday, where the defense raised carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide.
Can you lay it out? Just explain the whole thing. Because,
Nate, you go. You're going to do it
Emily's getting ready.
All right. Yeah.
When we change topics, I add lip gloss. Y'all don't have to worry about it.
Emily, is that a signal for when people mark on your videos that every time you do the lip gloss, then they know it's timestamp? So they get skill.
Emily, do that again. I saw a flashlight on the end.
No, it's a lightsaber lip gloss. So it has a mirror, and then it has a light so that if
Look
you
at-
look in the mirror, it lights up your lips so that you can see in the dark.
Oh.
This is what you get with a woman-owned company, is that when we can't see and we want to put on lip gloss, you get a light at the end of your lip gloss. I call it the lightsaber lip gloss for obvious reasons. That's not what they call it
I
when they
brought
sell
beauty and fashion to
But-
the show today, guys.
You can see
that.
In one
it.
person.
Mirror, light.
Amazing.
If I ever go out to dinner again somewhere, like a beautiful steakhouse with expensive wine and it's dark, I'll still be able to put on my lip gloss because my old ass is not going to the club. That's just what it is.
Okay.
We should talk about serious topics.
Oh,
Nate,
so
Nate, give us the
Yeah,
update.
Nate, can you lay it out?
yesterday, yeah. All right. So yesterday, what happens is that we had rebuttal witnesses. The defense closed. They were supposed to open up this morning with the drug dealer, but he said he's taking the Fifth Amendment. Court said, yeah, he can't testify on anything because the state can possibly try him for felony murder of George Floyd because he gave him the drugs, and then he's charging, Chauvin with felony murder because of the assault. That's it. So anyway, yes. So here comes the rebuttal witnesses come up. Supposedly that night before, the ME for the defense gave his testimony. The ME for the state said, hold on, carbon monoxide, we did that test. And they went back into their records and saw we did the test that the ME for the defense said should have been done so they would know if carbon monoxide was a contributing factor to Floyd's death. So they had this test and they brought it to court and said, we want to rebut the defense's ME's assertion that carbon monoxide could have been a factor because we have the exact test that shows that this was false. But the problem is that the state had this test result for like almost a year, like 6 or 7 months before. And supposedly nobody put 2 and 2 together and said, this is important. And neither did they give it when the defense asked for all the all the medical testimony, for all the medical evidence. They didn't send that to them. So the defense's expert made their opinion, but in his opinion and in his report, he specifically said, you should have done this test so we would know if this was a factor. But since you didn't do the test, I have to now include it to come to my conclusion that this was, that it could be a factor. So now then the judge was like, well, listen, that's just unfair. You can't just now after they close and the defense's expert is on a plane going back to wherever he's from. You can't now bring this in and say, well, he was wrong. It wasn't really him that was wrong. You just didn't give him the evidence in time. So we're not going to penalize the defendant for you not providing the evidence in a timely manner, which was the correct. And people who watched the stream yesterday, it was the correct. The judge was right, 100%. It was just wrong for them to do that. But the expert could testify to another way there was another way that you can figure this out, where because there's an inverse relationship between oxygen in the blood and carbon monoxide in the blood because they have the same binding agent. So if you have like 100% oxygen, you can't have any carbon monoxide. If it's 98% oxygen, you can only have 2% carbon monoxide. But it's a less reliable test. The test is less reliable. So the judge said, okay, you can testify to that, but you can't testify to the definitive proof. So here comes the expert, and the expert mentions, I think, the letters for the wrong test. And the judge made it very clear that if you mention it, it's a mistrial, right? And the mistrial will actually be on the people. So there may be some, so we're talking about a dismissal with prejudice here, and he may not being able to bring it back up. So as soon as the expert said it, the judge stopped, right? It was like, stop, objection. They went back, and you can tell the defense attorney, he was begging for a mistrial. Mistrial, no mistrial. They went on to testify.
The judge actually threatened that he was going to mistrial.
The judge said he was going to mistrial if he mentioned it. If they even mentioned it.
Yep.
And he mentioned it, but supposedly he didn't mention that test. He was mentioning it for the reason, but whatever. He just did say they mentioned it. They sustained the objection. Then before it was cross-examination, they went back in the chambers, and again, you could tell the defense attorney, he's just begging, please, please, please. This is obviously a mistrial. The judge said the damage wasn't done, and they went through it. So that was the whole mistrial thing yesterday. But specifically, the prosecution, I don't want to say hid evidence, but evidence that blew up.
The prosecution failed to turn over
evidence
that they're obligated to turn over, that they've had. That look
for about 6 months.
Nate, you're a former prosecutor. I'm a former prosecutor. Doesn't that shit just piss you off? You're like, no. We don't play fucking games with this shit. You turn it all over because if you get a conviction, you want it to be clean. There's so many appealable issues in this case that even if he is convicted, you still have a plethora of appealable issues that are going to take this case down the road of appeal.
It was, I mean, like I've never done criminal, and in civil, this crap happens all the time. And we call it trial by ambush, and you're not supposed to. You're supposed to communicate documents, discover them. In criminal, I mean, I know the principles. It's full disclosure. There's no, what we think is relevant. Full disclosure of everything.
And turn over my file.
And Nate, when you said, it's not to assume intentions of anybody, but you say we conducted that report. They said they conducted that report after their experts, who were still watching this trial and watching the defendant's experts testify. They now say they contacted the prosecution and said they had this test. They pulled this test result that they allegedly conducted back in May, the night of, and said, "Oh, look, we had this here." So, there are people who are going to say maybe they didn't have those results back then. They see a problem. They want to create the evidence now or run the test now. Others are going to say the best case scenario, they had it and did it back then and failed to disclose, which is a
no. That's what happened. Let's just be clear. They had it. They did the test. Their excuse was the ME said, we didn't think carbon monoxide had anything to do with this. We did the test. We had the test. We just because we turned over so much information. This is the problem when you turn over 1,000-page document. We forgot to turn over this test, which we thought was irrelevant.
So did the ME forget to turn it over to the prosecution, so the prosecution couldn't give it to the defense? Is that what happened?
That's supposedly what happened. But then there was a second time they could have turned it over with the judge mentioned, is that when they first got the ME's report from the defense side, it specifically said you should have done this test. So the judge is like, well, if you read that, you would say, "Oh, we did do this."
You would ask your expert, "Hey, we're supposed to."
Yes, and you could have turned it over then, but they didn't do that in February. And now, after they close, it's like, no, guess what? We have the test. We can't do that. That's wrong.
It's so infuriating because as a prosecutor, under the law, you have to turn over things you might not even know that were done, but you still have to turn it over. It's your job as the prosecutor to sit down with your detective and be like, give me your file. I need to make sure I have everything. Or, and I've done this on larger cases, bring in the defense attorney, the detective, any other experts, and yourself, and you sit at a conference table and go through the file and turn it over. If there's anything that needs to be redacted so it doesn't get out into the world, you redact it there and say, I'm redacting these things and turning it over. If it's a huge issue, you turn it all over to the judge and say, can we please redact these things? But it's your job to make sure this shit happens properly and gets turned over. Even if as the prosecutor, you don't know that your detective or the ME has it, it's your job to say, are you sure it's everything? Bring everything you have to my office and I'm going to sit down page by page and make sure we have it, because that is the easiest appealable issue ever, because you just have to turn it all over. All of it.
Just so everybody knows, ME medical expert. And my question is this the same medical expert? This was the medical expert at the time, so not the experts that are volunteering to be the experts for the prosecution.
No, this is the state's medical examiner.
The state's ME. Yeah. And they know this.
He heard it. He said, oh yeah, we did that test, and then gave off the test. But the thing is that I think even if you do have an appealable issue, which I do agree with, I think, will it change is it enough to change the outcome? And I don't think it is, because I think it does help the prosecution. It hurts the defense. So even if you go on appeal and say, well, yeah, they didn't turn over this test hurts them, because then it shows that the MEs, was less conclusive. So I don't think it's enough to overturn, but I do think it was, it's ripe with problems. And people have to have faith that prosecutors aren't just looking for convictions, that they're looking for justice. And doing something like this, when you had two times, because the judge made it very clear, there were 2 times where they should have turned this over, at the beginning, and specifically when the other side said, you should have done this. He specifically said you should have done this test, and to know that you've had that test for months and then wait till after they close, that is I don't want to say unethical. That is just wrong.
It's illegal. There are laws that require you to do it. It's okay to say, look, most prosecutors who have been prosecutors for a very long time don't want to get a conviction that is going to have appealable issues. You want to get a conviction if you do all this work and spend the money and bring in the jurors. And these are jurors under stress. These are jurors in a very high profile case. If and when they come back and convict, you want that conviction to be clean. you don't want appealable issues that are going to undo the work that you've done and might have to retry it down the road. Doing trials 5 or 6 years later when they come back on appeal is a much different ballgame than doing it when all the witnesses are still around. Having to try something based on a report from an ME that's been dead for 10 years is really, really difficult. So
the lawyer was skating when he was answering the judges, and you can tell when a lawyer is weighing his words or her words because they know they've stepped in it, and now the question is how do we try to sneak this in now, knowing
Come on, give us the analogy, David.
They didn't need it. They didn't need it, though.
Here. You listened. It was Blackwell, I think, who was taking the heat from the judge.
Yes,
he was hemming and hawing, and he was using a lot more uhs than I've ever heard him use because he got caught in it. They knew they did, and they're trying to undo the mistakes that they know they made.
It was stupid. It was they didn't need it. They didn't need this anyway.
But the question now is what else did they not disclose? I mean, once you get into this. And so, now we got caught with our not hands in the cookie jar. We got caught stepping in at this time. What else is there? And is there something else? It's a way to undermine the entire process. But I don't think very many people have faith in the prosecutorial process. If anyone's been watching our channel for long enough, you see when they want to get a conviction, they'll go for a conviction and they'll do things which are unscrupulous to say the least, and probably never face sanctions.
Well, hold on. I got to defend my guys here. My people.
No, I like that Nate's jumping at it before me. Go for it, Nate.
Yeah, because I've been there. Those late nights, you're looking at documents, you're trying to do everything right. You make a mistake. These are people too. I made mistakes, and people make mistakes. But there are certain mistakes that, especially on a high-profile case, you do not make. Right? It is just clear you do not make. And this is one of those mistakes. Like even if you saw my live stream coverage, this is a mistake you do not make. This is a mistake that, especially, didn't have the guy get in the stand and make the damn mistake on the stand and threaten to ruin your case, threaten to mistrial your case with jeopardy attached. Those are mistakes. So it's competency now we're talking about. And I think that's the issue here, is because people have to have trust that prosecutors are doing their job. They're competent at doing their job. And what happened yesterday was a travesty, but I don't think it's enough to blow up the stuff. But I do think on appeal, this case is probably going to go on for the next 10 years because, like Emily said, there are so many stupid appealable issues that can just be raised back and forth, and we're going to be going through this thing forever. So again, I do think there are bad prosecutors out there, but the people who I work with definitely are, unless he's acquitted. The people who I work with generally are trying to do the right thing, but there's certain people who just make mistakes.
Okay, we're short on the time, so before everybody takes off, I definitely want to get what you guys think will happen.
Well, you need to give not odds in the exploitive sense, but there are some outcomes which are much less likely, and if you go for them, it's a much less likely outcome. Full acquittal is probably the least likely outcome because at the very least they can get him in theory on the manslaughter charges, the lesser of the three. Then the full conviction is going to be the other one, which will be less likely. You're going to look somewhere in the middle for the curve, but. Look, this is notwithstanding what I believe and not because of what I believe, because everybody knows my position from the beginning, attenuated by a lot of the evidence that has come out. But based on the way this trial has gone, I would not be surprised with a full acquittal, because I think they've raised a sufficient reasonable, and not just any doubt, a reasonable doubt on the actual cause of death, which even according to the prosecution's own timeline, my initial reaction, his Chauvin's foot on his neck when he's unresponsive for 4 minutes. If by the prosecution's own evidence he had passed away after 3 or 4 minutes, then all of those aggravating circumstances for even assault or manslaughter become legally not consequential, because by the prosecution's own admission evidence, he died after 4 minutes. So it's the less likely that I think I'm going with, but the trial has raised a reasonable doubt, I think, by the evidence. And they maybe should have prosecuted on softer charges from the beginning, or at least included charges that they could have easily proven beyond a reasonable doubt, instead of going for the overcharge, in my humble opinion.
Emily.
I also thought it was overcharged. I think that the manslaughter is most likely, but I think that a hang, if there's a conviction, I think the manslaughter is the most likely charge. I think it could absolutely hang. I think the kind of the societal pressure on it is going to make some, even if they feel like there's a reasonable doubt, it's going to make them feel personally conflicted to acquit, which shouldn't be a thing with juries, but will be an absolute thing with this jury. So I think that a hang is probably the most likely outcome. if there's a conviction, I think it's on the manslaughter. And I also think that the judge not sequestering them will come up
To bite.
to bite the judge in the ass, because that is going to be very appealable. So, should they have moved this trial initially? Maybe. There's definitely room for doubt in this case. And I've seen the defense do a good job of putting in doubt and putting in a lot of preservation of grounds to appeal. So I think a hang is going to be, unfortunately, what's going to happen, because these jurors have to feel like they are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I've had juries come back with notes saying, before the verdict is up, we want the court to make sure that we can leave out the back. We don't want to leave out the front. So I've seen juries afraid for their personal safety, and it weighs very heavily on them. And that could absolutely happen in this case.
Nate.
Well, for me, I am not convinced that there's any reasonable doubt. And, I'll just say, Minnesota, understanding, if this was in New York, I would have a different opinion. But because I've been doing this deep dive into Minnesota law, it's just so weird. I just think they got him for second-degree felony murder. Number one, they have to just prove that this was a simple assault.
The felony murder rule in Minnesota is so weird.
Yes. And if you just have to prove this was a simple assault to get to felony murder, then I don't see how you don't have that. Second, with the cause of death, they don't have to prove he was the sole cause of death because this is felony murder. They just have to prove that he was a substantial cause. And with the case law, right? You have cases in Minnesota, I found, I think, 3, in which the court found as a matter of fact that the person would not have died but for the assault, right? But for I think there was one case in which the guy was beat up. The court said, well, a healthy person would have survived the beating, but this guy had a heart attack, and the person was convicted for felony murder. So with those facts, and if you're saying, if they only have to prove, which if you look at the jury instructions, the ones proposed by the defense, if they just have to prove that this was an assault in the 3rd degree to get felony murder, I think you got that in spades. I think if the jury now is starting to think of consequences, which I don't think they're really permitted to do, but if they're starting to think of consequences, we 40 years of life and we really want manslaughter, I think we got manslaughter in spades. To be honest, it's just the fact that it's hard when you go back there, you see something on camera. That's hard to overcome. And it's hard for me to overcome is that this was somebody who was non-responsive, in handcuffs, with somebody on top of them for 4 minutes. And
Absolutely.
As a practitioner, and as this, at the point when somebody's on top of you and somebody checks your pulse, this guy has no pulse, this guy's not breathing, and this guy is passed out, and you still continue the use of force that you're continuing, it's just going to be hard to overcome this thing. That's not a simple assault. And if you got assault, you got murder in Minnesota. So, maybe in other states and maybe in other jurisdictions, it may not be enough. But if you just have to prove that that's an assault, and you just have to prove that assault led to that person's death, then I think you got murder in the 2nd degree. Now, the jury, I think they hang, because I think not sequestering them, I think you're going to have some, righties there and some people who are listening to other media and who's going to come to their opinions. Oh, there's reasonable doubt. But I think either you get a hang or you get secondary, because I just don't see it. If again, assault is easier to prove than manslaughter. I'm talking about Emily.
You're saying
am I wrong?
No, assault is easier to prove, and the length of time is definitely a concern there. It absolutely is. And it's just how the jury feels about the other evidence that came up with the defense and the cause of death and stuff. And that's where it's like, okay, it is a simple assault. Did it cause death? Again, the felony murder rule in Minnesota is so strange to me. It's hard to wrap my head around, because
right.
I've not seen another jurisdiction where the assault itself is the felony underlying the murder. And it's weird to me.
It's the reductio ad absurdum, is that in Minnesota, by the law, it seems that any manslaughter leading to death is felony murder. So why do you even have manslaughter?
Right.
So
it could be, yes.
But someone actually said it was under, I think it was way too far up. They said I think they meant it as a joke, but whether, Peter Spinney says, if he died after 4 minutes, could they charge him with desecrating a corpse?
Yes,
so that I can't find the decision. I remember reading this in law school that someone in Canada was accused of sexual assault on a person that ended up being deceased, and they couldn't convict him on it because the preconditions were not met. So that is a legitimate That is, in theory, there could have been subcharges or lesser but not included charges that they could have included that they chose not to include, from what I understand. I mean, we don't know why, but maybe for the political reasons. But no, there could have been lesser charges other than going after the home run, so to speak. But
how do you get lesser than assault in the third degree? In this case, like how low can you go under the assault in the third degree?
Which
That's
really
what they're trying to prove, right?
Yeah.
If they go with
assault in the third degree.
No, but they didn't go with assault in the third degree. They went with felony murder, which you need to prove the assault in the third degree. So they didn't even go for the assault in the third degree.
Right.
Which is why I think had they gone for assault in the third degree, no brainer. Obviously, no.
Well,
brainer.
hold on. They are going for. They have to prove the assault in the third degree to get murder. That's why the jury instructions have.
It's rolled into the one. Right?
Yeah. So the causation is the only thing that you can really cause with the. But I think you got the causation. But and whether it was and again with felony murder, it's a strict liability crime too. So if you prove the assault, you don't have to prove the intent to even kill him for the felony murder. So that's why I think everybody, maybe people are going to be shocked, but I think that law is so bad that if Chauvin gets convicted, it'll probably be because the law is bad and not because they actually proved it. Because again, it's just a simple assault that led to the death. That's felony murder.
And that'll go up on appeal forever. And they'll be like, why is this jurisdiction still a jurisdiction that has an assaultive crime underlying a felony murder? But Nate, I had a question for you. Were you surprised in the amount of police officers that came forward and testified for the prosecution in this case? Because it's the most I've seen in any of the cases I've followed where you get the entire chain of command coming in saying, this is absolutely not within our policy. And I agree with that, because when we all saw this go down, I went, that is not policy. It can't for any department I've ever worked with. But yes. I was interested to see how many of the chain of command came forward.
Well, I think there's two things. These people still got to work with these people. I mean, you got the chief saying he murdered the guy. Then you know who appoints the people to precinct commanders? It's the chief. You know who appoints these people? You know who hey, you passed the test, you get that, it's the chief. So now you don't want the lieutenant who's a trainer who's still got a career to go on. Do you train people to do this? Because if you do, you're not going to be doing that cushy 9 to 5 that you do every day. That's not going to be your job anymore. If you train Chauvin to do that. So I think there's a piece of that has to come forward. That has, this is not like here in New York where it's kind of like it's iffy. It's just like, hey, we're saying, this, and your career is now, attached to this, and nobody wants to be the cop who does this. That's why I think that even a use of force expert, is having some problems. But I think at the end of the day, what this is going to come down to is, was this an authorized use of force? Because if it was, he's acquitted, right? You can't convict him for an authorized use of force. And you have every cop in his department, all of his supervisors, all his trainers saying it wasn't. And was this death caused by Chauvin? Well, now you got 5 doctors saying it was, and the defense's doctor is not saying it wasn't. He's just saying it's inconclusive. I just don't see how you get reasonable doubt from the defense's own doctor saying it's inconclusive, and the other one saying we sure it's conclusive. It is. Well, that's not reasonable doubt to me.
Three of the prosecution experts disagreed with one of the prosecution experts on the cause of death, which itself is odd. But I do think seeing all the police force themselves come and testify against Chauvin, I mean, to me, that rang as them trying to hide
CYA.
the policy. They're trying to avoid an indictment of the police force itself, because we know what was in the manuals. We know how they changed the online description of training and how they tried to scrub it from the internet. We know the precedent coming out of the state in terms of what has led to a past acquittal, and the implausible denial of, I don't recognize that method that he was using. I forget the training specialist said it when it's in the manual. So it's undoubtedly the force trying to protect itself from its own policy issues, which I really think are what's at issue here.
But let me be clear though. Let me be clear when I say the pulmonologists, toxicologists, like all of them said that the police restraint was the cause of death. And the difference was because the rest of those doctors said some had contributing factors. Some said, well, it doesn't matter, the contributing factors, whatever, right? But they've all said that Chauvin's actions were the primary cause of death, right? This was the thing that precipitated death. The defense's expert, he says it's non-conclusive. So that's what. So now you're right. They were saying, well, some says it helped, some says his primary, some says this, but they all in unison are saying Chauvin actions caused this man's death. The details are different, but the conclusions is the same, and you have one guy. So that's what I'm saying. I would, and generally, from again, Emily, you could tell me if I'm wrong. When juries go back there, they're not saying, well, this guy said it might be this. They're going to say, well, all these experts said one thing, and this expert's not saying that they're wrong. He's saying, I just don't know. That's a loss for the defense for me. Do you agree, Emily? I don't know.
I mean, juries are so, and I didn't watch this jury get picked, but juries can be so interesting the way that the kind of hive mind of a jury works, and they all sort problems differently.
That's true.
They could all go back and say, you know what? In my gut, I feel this is how I feel, and not debate the evidence. And I've seen juries do that. Or they could debate this evidence for days and days and days. They are going to finally be sequestered when it comes to deciding the evidence, which tends to lead to more time to discuss, but it can also lead to a hang if you get one or two people going, I'm not changing my mind. So, and then the jury's just going to be like, forget it. We're not going to even try to change their mind. We'd all like to go home after this. It'll be very interesting to see. And I worry about the external and societal circumstances weighing on this jury, because even though what we all watched on this video and Chauvin's actions, all of us went, why in the fuck is this happening? What I don't want to see is societal pressure changing the way juries decide if there's doubt or if there's not doubt, because every defendant deserves a fair and equitable trial, even defendants that everybody hates. And that worries, that aspect of this worries me, and we'll see how that plays out. But we saw that in other cases, and we've seen that in other high profile cases. I don't know what the solution to that is, because getting people off their phones and off social media and not influenced by family members is a very big problem. But we'll see. I will see. It's such an interesting system we have, isn't it?
It is. What I think the only, call it a silver lining, if there can be one, is the coverage and the independent analysis that this trial has been getting. I think at the very least has sensitized the general public to what would have otherwise been beyond an echo chamber of mainstream media coverage. I think people are relatively well informed. The only issue is that, the people, one way or the other, there's going to be people reacting one way or the other. But I think it's a systemic problem, just police escalation of force over incidents that should never get there in the first place. And it doesn't help that you have the police force looking absolutely inhuman in their treatment of another person over, what his issue is, a fake 20 and some drugs.
Right.
But it's anyways, these cases take on a life of their own, and they begin to represent much more than just the incident itself. And that's what's going on here.
I think it's an interesting way to point out what the media reporting was and what has come out at trial, because this trial has happened fairly quick in time, given all of the surrounding circumstances. This was a very fast prosecution, in my opinion, especially with the police use of force. Often police use of force, the investigation will take 9 to 10 months, if not more, before there's even an arrest or a charge. So this has happened very quickly. I think it'll be interesting to look at what the media facts were on this case initially and what has come out at trial, and be able to go through, like, look, when stories are breaking, we don't know all the facts. We know a lot of the headlines, but we don't know all of the facts. And that examination is very interesting to me.
I think they want to get
the most important part of what's going to make this is Monday. Those closing statements are going to, I think, are going to be, that's either he's going to be convicted Monday, or he's going to be acquitted Monday based on those statements. But like I think Emily's right. I think hung jury is probably the most likely option.
And we'll see. I mean, we'll see how fast. The longer this jury goes, the more skeptical I will become. Convicting juries tend to go a little bit faster in my experience. I mean, and that's different, of course, given a media case. But if they have a lot of serious questions going into deliberations, then that indicates that they have a lot of serious questions, and that makes it less likely that they convict.
How long do you guys think the jury will take? Just offhand.
Sequestering a jury, they want to get the hell out of there. I'm talking about less than a week, maybe, because don't forget when that weekend starts coming up.
Way faster than that.
Yeah, they're trying to get the hell out of there.
It won't be like 4 hours.
Nah,
I can't imagine it would be hours.
But the same thing they said with OJ, right? No,
True.
They're like, we're out of here.
They went in, they're like, fuck this shit, we're out.
Hey, Eric, before you go, Eric, I saw someone say 1,500 watching and only 500 thumbs up. Everyone, thumbs up and subscribe to Eric if you're not, before we forget to do that.
Hit that
and
sub
subscribe to
button,
these
baby.
guys. I mean, geez, if you aren't already, I mean, you're nuts.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've got a rock star panel here.
So Nate, how long do you think? You think not the full week?
I'm
Oh,
under
no,
a
I don't
week
think
as well.
hell no, it's not going to. It's not going to. I'm thinking it could go the week because you're there, you're at the hotel, you're chilling, you got getting paid, it's great. But I think when you start getting to the let's get to Jesus. Friday, it's like, oh my God, we got to get the hell out of here. You know what I'm saying? Get Johnny, let him know. And then and then it all depends if I think if they're still split by Thursday, that's when you'll start getting those notes. Like, we got a crazy person here, or we got a crazy person. Either way, right? Crazy person thinks he's guilty, crazy person, and that's when you'll see. But if he's going to get convicted, I'm thinking you're talking about maybe day 1 or day 2. I think if it's hold out longer than that, then that's less likely for a conviction and more likely for either a hanging or it's an acquittal.
And it depends on how long those arguments last Monday.
One thing I also do want to say that I do think is going to be definitely on this jury is the riots and protests that are going on now for the other police shooting. Because don't forget, this jury is not living in a box. They got to know that if we let this guy go, our kids may not be able to go to school, right? We may not be able to leave our homes. There's going to be hell on the streets.
Which is wrong.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's right. What I'm saying is it's something that you have to take into account when this jury is going back there, because that's a hell of a thing to know. If we say this guy is innocent, we might not be able to send our kids to school for a week because all hell's going to break loose. That's, even though they shouldn't be thinking about that, that's just the reality. And for them having to go back and forth. But listen, even for that, they having to go back and forth through these riots and protests now, right? Yep. They're not sequestered. And going back and forth and seeing how light it is for some guy who had a felony warrant that was shot by accident. Just imagine if they acquit on this. That's what I'm talking about. And if people don't think that's something the jury's thinking about, you're just fooling yourself.
They're absolutely thinking about it. That's why they should have been sequestered.
Yes.
Somebody brought this up, I think is funny. It'd be hilarious if Nate's jury prediction is wrong because everyone's used to COVID sequestration. Jesus, I can't even say it.
Huh?
Sequestration?
Yeah. Sequestration. Well, listen, I've been right. I'm on a streak, right? I got like 10 straight now. I'm streaking hard right now. So boom.
All right. Well,
don't
Nate's
break the streak.
I mean, convictions come faster.
Brag or explain himself.
Well, I got to be wrong. I got to lose once. So maybe this is the one that's going to go down.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much. I know everybody's got hard outs, and I deeply, deeply appreciate this.